Today we look at a game spawned from the unusual mind of Justin Roiland, the creator of Rick and Morty, which is a show that I have a complicated relationship with.
Jesus, how many things do you have a complicated relationship with?
Like most of the things. Wait a minute, you're not a PS5.
No, I'm that console you only ever remember when you won't play New Vegas or modded Fallout 4.
Look, I'm sorry for the neglect, alright? It's just used to take so long to boot up and your interface is so unintuitive and buggy that I just cannot deal with it most of the time. But hey, I got Xbox Gold now and I can't deny your deals and subscriptions are light years better than anything Sony does.
I was hoping this year you'd be less insulting to me.
Nah, I won't be doing that.
Well, alright, but once you tire of that old dusty boxy, with its horrible user interface and awkward as fuck recording option, then you know where to find me.
I'm at peace with what I am.
Justin Roiland is a very odd creator with an immediately noticeable style present in all his works. If you don't know, he's the co-creator of Rick and Morty and Solar Opposites. He's also currently facing felony charges for domestic violence. What a fun way to start this out. I won't be talking about it in detail here today, that's for someone else to handle, someone more tasteful and, let's face it, talented than myself. On the upside, it does cut out nearly 4 minutes of rambling nonsense to discuss the style and mannerisms of this weirdo, and we can now just discuss the bad game on its own merits.
Will you stop giving away your opinion so soon?
Probably not. High on Life is an FPS that follows the adventure of a nameless, genderless, personality-deficient individual who was playing video games in their room one day when their sister comes in, tells them their parents have buggered off on holiday and says she's planning a party. She also offers us some drugs, which is a big theme in this game as you guessed by the title. We go downstairs, head outside to do something, when aliens invade, and immediately I have to talk about just how out of place these guys look in this realistic modern setting. Now these aliens follow the same style as Rick and Morty and Solar Opposites, with big eyes, flat colour, weird proportions, etc., and they just sort of look like cartoon characters. However, this universe's humans do not look like this. They look more realistic, which is odd because usually Roiland's humans match this cartoonish style in the name of artistic consistency, but given that the game makes use of AI generated images, artistic vision is clearly not something that was considered here. Thankfully this segment is short. An alien gets killed and we take his gun, which is a living creature named Kenny. He tells us the aliens are part of a group called the G3, who are intergalactic criminals and drug runners and that we need to flee Earth before we're turned into drugs. Obvious joke, man, they must have been high when making this. There, we can now move on with our lives. Earlier we were introduced to the gunplay via a retro video game level that our character was playing in their room. Think old style Doom, and honestly it was pretty enjoyable. The annoying voiceover aside, it was fast paced and fun. It taught us the basic controls of what we could and couldn't do. Outside our house with Kenny in hand, we return to the combat and notice it's considerably less fun. See, High on Life is a shoddy game. The combat only ever tops out at being competent at best, and even that's pushing it.
Hey now, is that really fair?
I mean, you've played it, you tell me.
So, viewer, I don't game as much as Ronica does, so this is coming from more of the perspective of the casual gamer. But I was happy enough with the combat. I thought it was uncomplicated and fun to engage in. Okay, so it was buggy and a little broken and laggy and unbalanced to the point where most enemies can be killed with a single knife wound to the face, or in some cases 2 or 3. Okay, I sort of see what you're saying.
Now the combat can be enjoyable, I will agree. Kenny is reasonably powerful and has decent accuracy, the movement is fast, and you have an armor meter that you can refill by slaughtering enemies, you don't have to constantly search for ammo, which keeps the pace up, and there's no cover system to ruin shit. However, it's annoying that the health is tied to a regen system, because for some reason this trend just won't die, I guess because it keeps fucking regenerating, but overall the combat is, I'd say, a solid 4 out of 8 ducks, could be better.
Wait, what now?
I preferred the level traversal, honestly. The levels you go through are large enough to offer some exploration, but also remember to have a clear critical path, with extra areas being accessible with the unlock of new abilities. High on Life pretty much gets this right. Each gun has a special ability. Kenny can fire a big snot ball that stuns and launches enemies into the air, but can also be used to shift certain platforms. The second gun, Gus, who works like a shotgun if shotguns were shit and did nothing, can fire a sword blade that does effectively carve through enemies, but can also create platforms to stand on when it embeds itself into certain weak walls. The third gun, whose name I don't care to remember, who shoots crystals that make enemies weak to melee damage, can fire through walls with a charged shot and can also shoot a time bubble that slows objects objects down, such as fans and vehicles. Then there's the gun Creature, who shoots his kids that track enemies and leech health from them over time. He fires a special mind-controlled baby that makes an enemy into an ally, albeit very temporarily, and these kids can be shot into vents to solve simple puzzles to move forward. You also have a knife that doubles as a grappling hook, and when you combine all these, you get level traversal that's pretty decent. It's more on the positive side of competent, and at least the game doesn't bug or stutter as much during the traversal. You can buy weapon and suit mods like extra ammo caps and skills like power slides. A couple of the mods change the functionality of the guns slightly and also give them new colours, which all work well enough and aren't worthy of further comment. I give it like 5 out of 7 seahorses.
Seriously? What the fuck?
So the combat is closer to the negative end of the spectrum, whilst platforming is edging towards the positive end, but what about the graphics and sound?
Okay, the music can fuck off.
Yes it can. The background music feels so generic and uninspired. Worse still, sometimes it gets stuck between the combat track and the peaceful track because the game isn't sure if all the enemies are dead or not. Graphically, the game is fine. Once you get off the Earth and go into the alien places, everything looks more consistent, though the animations are a bit stiff and lifeless. On a note about the animations, when I pick up the knife dude, the guys that we immediately murdered with him still clearly have their alive models after death because the game either forgot to swap them for dead versions or just didn't have any. Enemies usually vaporize from the map when you kill them, and now I see why. At least the game's HUD works, and for the most part, it's clear when you're getting hit and from which direction, so the bits that need to be are largely functional, although the radar that indicates enemy presence occasionally just stopped doing that. I do have to say now that I enjoy the executions you can perform with a knife that quickly delete most enemies aside from the elites. They're pretty brutal. They do make some enemies way too easy to dispatch combined with the armor drops and the AI's incompetence, but hey, they're kinda cool. So I guess the audio-visual feedback, graphics and sound are like 6 hamburgers out of 12 horses.
This joke is stupid.
You're stupid.
Epic comeback, sis.
Insightful response, fuckface.
Look, we both know what you're doing. Just get to the story, will you? I'll even get you started. The story is about aliens making humans into drugs. Doesn't take itself too seriously.
Alright. The story indeed is rather silly, intentionally so, but as I was discussing with Vera the other night, it often feels too silly, you know? Now, a comedy game doing comedy things is absolutely fine. Comedy and drama can coexist as well, with the jokes being the main focus, but then quieting down when something serious happens. High on Life, to its credit, does try to do this. It just doesn't do it very well. When you escape the Earth, you seek out a man named Gene, a bounty hunter who is now a legless has-been, who introduces us to the alien world and explains things about the G3 cartel who we spend the game fighting. Our sister Lizzie comes with us, and she and Gene quickly get on each other's nerves, which I totally buy, as not only is Gene a rampant misogynist with an attitude problem, but it's also because it takes me like 72 seconds to determine whether or not someone annoys me, thanks to social media, often less. Not only that, but the writers clearly have a book of teenage girl tropes that they use to build her. Even her voice and vocal inflection sound like the generic insert teenager here situations.
You know they were pissed, right? Whatever, we got the place to ourselves now.
And so clearly she does drugs, is argumentative, insults everyone all the time, and even tries to run away with a boy that she just met, who she knows nothing about, but she just wants to be rebellious for rebelliousness' own sake. People were paid money to write this. Probably. I mean, again, the game uses AI-generated images, so if you told me the development team were creatively bankrupt enough to AI-generate the voice lines and personalities as well, I'd take you at your word. I'll be honest, each of the main characters are annoying, and all but one of the guns got on my nerves. Creature's a sweetheart. He's alright. He just wants to be your friend, but the others are loud and obnoxious to the point where muting the TV was something I did on my last 2 sessions. You can reduce the idle chatter of your gear, but this won't do anything for the drawn-out cutscenes and character interactions when it just won't shut the fuck up. The final gun you get, Let's Do It, constantly shouts his own name as if he were a Pokemon, which would be fine as he does have brain damage, but the game is already annoying. Adding another loud, obnoxious character into the mix really isn't going to solve the problem. As we go through the game, we clear levels full of bad guys and defeat the cartel bigwigs in boss fights. Those fights themselves are pretty alright as boss fights go. There's one later on that's all trippy and that's pretty nifty. They encourage the player to keep moving, they all have specific movesets you need to learn to better tackle them, and they're fought in reasonably sized arenas, with the occasional minion spawning to act as an armor refill. As far as characterization goes, haha, I'm another bad guy but slightly bigger is the personality they all share, same for the one dude who accidentally kills himself and it just leaves us to fight waves of minions. No idea what his character would have been, but I'd wager it'd be the same. We do see a hologram of him that's making assumptions about who killed him. I guess he was paranoid someone would kill him. The final boss dude is just as big, loud and boring as the rest of them, though the fight itself was interesting enough, as it's sort of a bullet hell style thing, which took me a few goes to deal with, mostly because sometimes the screen was so full of stuff I couldn't see anything. His second phase is infinitely easier than his first phase, as he shoots far less and uses attacks that you've already seen in other boss fights already. Also, keep in mind, you'll have Let's Do It by this point, and he deals a huge amount of damage, so it wasn't too much of a struggle. Once you incapacitate him, you stick a bomb up his ass, then Kenny follows it up there to set it off, and then the game ends. That's it. It ends. Cuts to credits. Okay, Cool, 10 hours and 23 minutes in total it took me to beat the game, and it felt far longer than that for one simple reason. This game is fucking annoying. Kenny never shuts the fuck up, even when reducing his idle chatter in the options menu. The majority of the jokes are just the NPCs over-explaining their motivation and repeating their names, though I could forgive this if the game would just cut out the meta jokes already. When you pick up the bounty hunter suit that gives you armor, the game does a pop-up joke which might have been fresh 10 years ago, but these days it's like saying the sky is blue and trying to get people to laugh at that fact. Pop-ups exist seems to be the whole joke, if you can call that a joke. The game just loves to remind you that you're playing a video game, which might have been subversive and fresh if it was done 20 years ago, but today it's something we've seen enough, and if you're gonna try this comedy route, then you've really got to have something to offer. Just doing the joke again is not funny. Just referencing other video games isn't a joke, it's something that breaks my immersion. Early on we kill a kid, I mean you don't have to kill a kid, but you can kill a kid, and I got an achievement called Fallout doesn't let you do this, and honestly, High on Life, it's a bad idea to make me think of a game I'd much rather be playing right now. The entire encounter is just a little bit too Rick and Morty for my liking because, again, the event is over-explained by all parties present because the game is afraid that you won't understand what's happening because it thinks you're stupid. Then again, if you willingly paid money for this trash, then yeah, it's a fair assumption to make, innit? At the end, what do we really have? An FPS that doesn't really have anything to say. Its gimmicks of the guns being alive is sort of interesting, but it was handled in the wrong way, i.e. making me want to find the nearest 44 and blow them all away. The platforming bits are alright, the combat is just okay, the plot is mental and could have been really funny if written by someone more competent, and honestly I feel like we're left with a game that just feels out of date. The previous 2 weeks I've reviewed games from 2010 and 2011, and honestly if you didn't tell me when High on Life was released and if I didn't know, I'd assume it was closer to 2011 or 2012 in terms of visuals and function. I wish it had just stayed as a retro game like in the beginning, that was somehow more stable. Enemies sometimes just disappear, I've had them clip entirely into floors and be rendered unkillable, there are constant frame rate drops that would embarrass Fallout New Vegas, the controls are a tad unresponsive, the loading times are fucking terrible, I've had the game crash a couple of times. Honestly, this is looking less and less like a game that was ready to be released.
I want to say quickly, I played this on the Xbox Series X because I'm better than you and didn't have the frame rate problem. Though I did experience a pause menu bug that made the camera look all the way up or down or wherever the fuck it felt like when I exited the menu, which was a bit weird.
I don't recommend High on Life. At the end of the day, it tops out at being just about competent, and it can't even manage this consistently. I genuinely sighed with relief when I saw those credits roll, as shocking as it was for them to just suddenly appear like that. Also, fuck the game for using AI art, even if it is just for background details, it's still bollocks. Just hire someone, you cheap fucks. Though it's not like what they did spend their money on was any better. So that's High on Life, an annoying adventure that doesn't shut the fuck up even when you ask it nicely, that does make an effort to do plot and character, but forgot to hire anyone with any relevant talent to make this work. A game with gameplay that, whilst mostly functional, isn't exactly revolutionary, and whilst it can be fun, it's not that much. At least not enough to compensate for its major shortcomings. Thank the flying spaghetti monster I didn't pay money for this. It isn't the worst game I've ever played, but it definitely would have taken 5th place on my worst games of 2022 if I'd gotten there in time. Anyway, thanks for watching. Don't forget to leave a like and a comment and subscribe if you're new. You can also support the channel on Patreon. You'll get 24 hours early access to new review videos and shout outs at the end of all the videos when you do. Also, I've got a merch store. It's on T-Mill. There's a link in the description. There's a link to everything in the description, so check them out. Anyway, I love you all, and we'll see you next week. What have I got for next week? What have I got for Lego Star Wars The Skywalker Ah, shit.